He lost his fortune with a single signature, and his family the very same day. Broken, alone, and forgotten, a fallen billionaire spends his last dollar on a child's kindness. What the girl quietly reveals shatters him, and leads him to the truth he was never ready to face. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Ronan Hale paused for half a second before signing his name, as if the ink itself were asking him to reconsider. But there was nothing left to reconsider. The numbers had already spoken. The contracts were final. The empire he built over 15 relentless years ended not with fire or scandal, but with a quiet stroke of blue ink. Across the polished conference table, the lawyers waited in respectful silence. No one rushed him. No one needed to. This moment had been coming for months. When Ronan finally signed, the sound of the pen clicking shut echoed louder than expected. "That concludes the transfer," the lead attorney said, calmly sliding the folder closed. "Hale Meridian Group is now under new ownership." Ronan nodded once. He did not argue. There was nothing left to defend. The glass walls of the boardroom reflected a stranger back at him, older, thinner eyes, hollowed by sleepless nights and decisions made too late. Outside, Manhattan moved on without pause. Sunlight spilled over skyscrapers, bright and indifferent, as if the city itself refused to mourn him. He stood, buttoned his jacket out of habit, and lifted the single cardboard box waiting by the door. Inside were fragments of a former life, a framed photo of his son holding a dinosaur toy, a few awards he no longer recognized as achievements, and a watch he hadn't worn since time stopped meaning anything. As Ronan stepped out of the boardroom for the last time, no one followed. No applause, no farewell. Just the soft hum of a building already forgetting him. In the elevator descending toward the street, Ronan exhaled slowly. He told himself this was only business. He told himself he could rebuild. What he didn't know yet was that this was only the beginning of what he had truly lost. The front door of the Westchester house opened too easily. Ronan stepped inside and immediately felt an emptiness that went beyond silence. The air itself seemed untouched, as if no one had breathed there all day. No piano notes drifting from the living room, no familiar footsteps on the stairs, no soft hum of conversation from the kitchen. "Sloan," he called out. "Nothing. Caleb." His voice echoed back unanswered. Ronan walked deeper into the house, his shoes tapping against marble floors that once felt warm with life. In the master bedroom, the first sign appeared. One side of the closet stood half empty, dresses gone, shoes missing. Drawers opened, then carefully closed again. His pulse quickened. In Caleb's room, the absence felt sharper. The bed was made, but too neatly. Several books were gone. The toy dinosaur collection, once scattered proudly across the shelf, had been reduced to empty space and dust. Ronan's chest tightened. He hurried downstairs. On the kitchen table sat a single envelope, centered, deliberate. His name was written across the front in Sloane's handwriting. Calm, controlled, final. He opened it with shaking hands. The letter was short, but every word landed heavy. She wrote about space, about exhaustion, about feeling alone even when he was physically present. About dinners eaten in silence, birthdays, rushed promises postponed until after this deal. She did not accuse. That hurt more. At the bottom, she wrote that she and Caleb were staying with her sister for a while, that they needed time to think, that she hoped he would understand. Ronan read the letter 3 times. The date at the top made his stomach drop. It had been written that morning before he signed away the company. He sank into a chair, the paper trembling in his hands. The house had not emptied suddenly. It had been empty for a long time. Ronan dialed Sloane's number immediately. Voicemail. He tried again. Same result. On the 3rd attempt, he stopped before pressing call, staring at the screen as if it might explain what he had done wrong in a language he could finally understand. "Sloane," he said, after the tone, his voice low and strained. "Please call me. We need to talk. I'm home." He ended the call and stared at the phone until the screen went dark. Outside, the late afternoon sun painted the windows gold, the same light that used to welcome him home from work. Now it felt like a spotlight exposing a truth he had avoided for years. Ronan replayed moments he once dismissed as unimportant. Caleb asking him to watch a school presentation. "I'll try," Ronan had said. He never went. Sloane reminding him about dinner plans. Just one more email he'd replied, eyes still on his phone. He told himself it was temporary, necessary, that providing was the same as being present. Now the quiet house argued otherwise. That night, Ronan lay on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. The company was gone. The money would follow. But the thought that crushed him most was simpler, sharper, and far more painful. His son had gone to sleep somewhere else, wondering if his father still cared. Ronan turned his face into the pillow, breathing slowly, carefully. For the first time in his adult life, there was no crisis to fix, no deal to negotiate, no phone call that could undo what had already happened. Only silence, and the growing fear that he had lost the only things that truly mattered long before he ever lost the company. A week after the house fell silent, Ronan Hale left it behind. The mansion was sold quietly without drama. Lawyers handled the paperwork. Movers packed the remnants of a life that once felt unshakable. Ronan did not watch. He signed where told, nodded when required, and walked away with less than he arrived with all those years ago. His new apartment in Queens was modest, almost startlingly so. 2 small bedrooms, thin walls, a kitchen where every sound echoed. The furniture came from second-hand stores, nothing matched, but everything worked. That alone felt like a lesson. On his first night there, Ronan sat on a folding chair near the window, staring out at a brick building across the street. A woman watered plants on a fire escape. Somewhere below, a radio played softly. Ordinary lives continuing without him. He opened his phone and scrolled to Sloane's contact again. He stopped himself. Pride whispered that he should wait. Fear whispered that if he called again, she might never answer. Ronan set the phone down. He unpacked slowly, placing the framed photo of Caleb on the narrow shelf above the desk. His son was smiling wide in the picture, holding a toy dinosaur almost as big as his arm. Ronan touched the frame lightly, as if the image might respond. "I'll fix this," he said aloud, though he no longer knew what fixing meant. That night, sleep came in fragments. The apartment creaked. Sirens passed in the distance. For the first time in decades, no schedule waited for him in the morning. And in the quiet, Ronan realized something unsettling. Without the company, without the house, without the routine of control, he did not know who he was anymore. Ronan put on the only suit he had left and began looking for work. At first he believed experience would still matter. Surely someone would see value in 15 years of leadership, negotiation, and strategy. He memorized new answers, adjusted his tone, softened his confidence into humility. The interviews were polite. Almost too polite. "You're impressive," one manager said, avoiding eye contact. But Ronan asked. "Well, your recent history," another interviewer added carefully. "It's complicated." Complicated was a gentle word for radioactive. By the 5th rejection, Ronan understood. His name no longer opened doors. It closed them. People saw risk headlines, creditors, failure. Not the man sitting across from them willing to start over at the bottom. By late afternoon, he found himself on a bench in Central Park, watching families spread blankets on the grass. Children ran in circles. Parents laughed unguarded. A boy tugged his father's sleeve, demanding attention, and got it. Ronan looked away. He remembered planning a perfect picnic once. Caterers, decorations, everything arranged down to the smallest detail. Then a phone call had pulled him away before the food was even served. Sloane and Caleb ate alone. Back in the apartment that evening, Ronan reviewed his remaining finances. The numbers were tight, unforgiving. He could survive a few months if he was careful. He sat at the small table and let the truth settle. He had spent years believing success was something you earned through sacrifice. Only now did he see who had paid the price. That night, Ronan bought a cheap notebook from a corner store. He didn't know why he did it. He had never been the type to write his thoughts down. But something inside him needed order, needed to be seen clearly for once. On the first page he wrote, "What I lost." The company, the house, the money, the reputation. The list filled the page quickly. On the second page he wrote, "What I still have." Health, education, time uncertain but real. The page stayed mostly empty. Ronan stared at it for a long moment, then turned to a third page. At the top he wrote one question. "What do I want back?" His pen hovered. He did not write success. He did not write power. He did not write Hail Meridian Group. He wrote two names, Sloan, Caleb. The simplicity of it hit him harder than any financial loss. Ronan leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. For years he had told himself he was working for them, for their future, for their comfort. Yet somehow they had been the ones waiting, adjusting, and hoping. He closed the notebook and pressed his palms against his eyes. I don't know how he whispered to the empty room, but I'll become someone worth coming back to. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the quiet decision being made in a small Queens apartment. Ronan lay down on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. He was at the lowest point of his life, but for the first time he knew exactly what mattered, and that knowledge, fragile as it was, felt like the beginning of something new. Time began to lose its edges. Ronan woke up every morning at 5:30. The same hour he had risen for decades, even though there was nowhere he needed to be. His body still obeyed the old rules. His life no longer did. He made coffee, carefully measuring the grounds, counting how many cups remained in the bag. Every small decision carried weight now. Every dollar mattered. He watched the street below his apartment window as the city came alive. Parents rushing children to school, delivery trucks, double-parked neighbors exchanging brief greetings that somehow felt warmer than anything he had known in years. Ronan had once watched life from above through tinted windows and elevator doors that opened only for him. Now he was standing among it. His days followed a quiet routine. Mornings spent searching for work. Afternoons walking, thinking, replaying old conversations he wished he could rewrite. Evenings with simple meals and the soft hum of the television he rarely watched. What hurt most were the moments in between. Seeing a boy tug at his father's sleeve on the subway, hearing laughter echo from a nearby apartment, passing a toy store window and instinctively looking for something Caleb might like. Weeks passed with little change. Sloan sent short messages through her sister. Caleb was fine, settling into a new school routine. No details, no warmth, just information. Ronan wanted to tell her the truth about the bankruptcy, about the apartment, about how small his life had become. But each time he typed the words, he erased them. Fear held his hands still. That night, Ronan sat on his bed and opened the notebook again. He read the names he had written days earlier. Sloan, Caleb. For the first time, he allowed himself to ask a question he had avoided. What if knowing where they were wasn't enough? What if finding them meant nothing if he hadn't yet become someone they could trust again? The thought followed him into sleep, heavy and unresolved. The heat that afternoon was relentless. Ronan walked through Queens with his jacket slung over his shoulder pockets, lighter than he cared to admit. He had just left another interview, another polite rejection dressed in careful words. By the time he reached the grocery plaza, he had exactly $1 in cash. He paused near the entrance, watching people come and go. Then he noticed the small table set up beside the walkway. A handwritten sign read, "Community School Fundraiser. Thank you for supporting local kids." Behind the table stood a girl of about 11. Her hair was tied into two uneven braids, and her oversized t-shirt had faded from too many washes. But her eyes were bright focused, observant, not pleading. She stood straight, hands resting lightly on the table as if this mattered to her. An adult volunteer chatted with another parent a few steps away. "Hi, sir," the girl said, offering a gentle smile. "Would you like some candy? It's for our school." Ronan almost said no. The dollar in his pocket could buy coffee tomorrow, something he'd come to depend on. But something in her voice, steady, respectful, stopped him. He reached into his pocket and placed the dollar on the table. "Sure," he said. "Chocolate, please." The girl handed him the bar carefully, as if it were more than candy. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Maya." "Ronan," he replied. She studied him for a moment, not rudely, just attentively. "You look tired," Maya said softly. Then almost immediately, "I'm sorry, that sounded rude." Ronan surprised himself by smiling. "It's okay," he said. "I am tired." Maya nodded as if that confirmed something. "My mom says being tired isn't always about sleep." Ronan laughed quietly. "Your mom sounds wise, she is?" Maya said. "She notices things." Ronan glanced at the candy bar in his hand. It had cost him his last dollar. He didn't know it yet, but it would turn out to be the most valuable purchase he had ever made. Ronan didn't know why he stayed. He could have walked away after buying the candy. A simple interaction. A polite exchange. But instead he lingered near the table, unwrapping the chocolate slowly. Maya watched him with quiet curiosity. "That picture," she said suddenly. Ronan froze. His phone was in his hand screen, lit a photo of Caleb smiling beside a playground slide dinosaur backpack slung over one shoulder. "That's your son, right?" she asked carefully. "Yes," Ronan replied. His voice felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. Maya nodded. "I thought so. You keep looking at it like you're trying to remember how it feels." Ronan swallowed. "I messed up," he said after a moment. "And now I don't know how to fix it." Maya leaned her elbows on the table, serious now. "My mom says fixing doesn't always mean fixing everything. Sometimes it just means starting in the right place." Ronan met her eyes. "And where is that, with being honest," she said, "and showing up?" She hesitated, then added, "I know a kid who misses his dad a lot." Ronan's chest tightened. "You do, yeah," Maya said. "He comes to the park with his mom. He talks about his dad like he's far away even though he's not." Ronan felt his pulse quicken. "What's his name?" Maya tilted her head, thinking. "Caleb." The world seemed to tilt with it. "He's 7, she continued. "Likes dinosaurs. Always carries one in his backpack. He said his dad used to have a big office, but not anymore." Ronan's breath caught. Maya watched his face closely. "Is that your Caleb?" Ronan couldn't answer right away. Finally, he nodded. "They go to Astoria Park on Sundays," Maya said gently, "after lunch. His mom reads on a bench while he plays." Hope rushed in, sharp and overwhelming. Ronan knelt so he was at Maya's eye level. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I'll be careful, I promise." Maya smiled, relieved. "I know." And just like that, the impossible no longer felt unreachable. Ronan arrived at Astoria Park too early. The morning air was still cool, the grass damp with dew, families only beginning to appear. Joggers passed him. Dog walkers nodded politely. Everything felt painfully normal for a moment, that felt anything but. He chose a bench far enough from the playground to avoid looking intrusive, close enough to see the path that led into the park. From here he could leave if panic took over. From here he could breathe. In his pocket was a small plastic dinosaur he had bought the night before. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, just something that said, "I was thinking of you." Ronan checked his watch. 11:12 a.m. Every passing woman with dark hair made his heart jump. Every child running ahead of a parent made his chest tighten. He told himself to stay calm, to remember what Maya had said. Be careful, Be honest, show up. At 11:41, he saw them. Sloane walked along the stone path, sunglasses on, posture straight but tired. Caleb skipped beside her backpack, bouncing, already tugging at her hand as if the playground were calling him by name. Ronan's breath left him in a single shaky exhale. They were real. Not memory, not imagination. He stayed seated as they passed, forcing himself not to rush forward. Sloane chose a bench near the playground, opened a book, and nodded as Caleb ran off toward the swings. Only then did Ronan stand. Each step felt heavier than the last. His mind raced through 1,000 ways this could go wrong. Sloane turning away. Caleb hiding behind her. The moment collapsing under the weight of everything unsaid. He stopped a few feet away. "Sloane," he said quietly. She looked up sharply, pulling off her sunglasses. Surprise flickered across her face, then something harder. "Ronan," she said. "Not angry, not warm. Just factual." "How did you find us?" "I've been looking," he replied. "For a while." Her eyes flicked to Caleb, then back to him. "What do you want?" Ronan swallowed. "A chance to talk, if you'll allow it." Sloane studied him the way she used to before trusting a decision. Finally, she nodded once. Briefly, she said, and carefully. Ronan nodded immediately. "Of course." For the first time in months, hope felt close enough to hurt. Caleb noticed him before Ronan noticed Caleb noticing. The boy slowed at the edge of the playground, 1 foot still on the gravel, eyes narrowing in confusion. He stared openly now, curiosity fighting with disbelief. "Mom," Caleb called. "Why is that man looking at us?" Sloane closed her book slowly. She followed her son's gaze. Her shoulders stiffened, but she didn't turn away. "That's..." She paused, choosing truth over comfort. "That's your dad." Caleb's eyes widened. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Then he stepped forward cautiously, as if the ground might disappear beneath him. "Dad," he asked, voice thin and hopeful. Ronan's knees weakened. He knelt instantly, lowering himself to Caleb's height, keeping his hands visible, non-threatening. "Hi, buddy," Ronan said, voice trembling despite his effort. "It's me." Caleb took another step, then stopped again. He glanced back at his mother, silently asking permission. Sloane nodded just slightly. Caleb crossed the last bit of space and stopped right in front of Ronan. He studied his father's face with intense focus, as if making sure this wasn't something he could lose again. "You're real," Caleb said. Ronan smiled softly. "Very real." "Why did you go away?" Caleb asked, not accusing, just confused. The question cut deeper than any courtroom loss. Ronan answered carefully. "I made mistakes, big ones, and I didn't handle them the right way." "I should have been here with you." Caleb frowned. "Mom cried at night." Ronan's throat closed. He looked briefly at Sloane, who had turned away, blinking rapidly. "I'm sorry," Ronan said. "For that too." Caleb shifted his backpack and pulled out the small dinosaur he carried everywhere. He held it up like evidence. "I bring him so I don't forget you," Caleb said simply. Ronan's eyes filled, but he didn't let the tears fall. "Not yet. I brought you something too," he said, reaching slowly into his pocket and pulling out the plastic dinosaur. "It's not as cool as yours." Caleb took it, examining it seriously. Then he smiled. "It's perfect." Sloane cleared her throat. "Half an hour," she reminded Ronan. Ronan nodded. "Thank you." As Caleb ran toward the swings, glancing back every few seconds to make sure his father hadn't vanished, Ronan stood beside Sloane. "Thank you for letting me see him," he said. She didn't answer right away, but she didn't tell him to leave, and that for now was enough. Ronan played like he had never played before. He pushed swings. He ran slowly, careful not to overdo it. He listened, really listened, as Caleb explained playground rules, imaginary dinosaur battles, and why the slide was faster if you leaned a certain way. For 30 minutes, the world narrowed to the sound of his son's laughter. No phone, no meetings, no future calculations. Just now, Sloane watched from the bench pretending to read. In truth, she observed every detail. Ronan's patience, his focus, the way he let Caleb lead instead of directing the moment. When the half-hour ended, Caleb clung to Ronan's arm. "Do you have to go?" he asked. Ronan looked at Sloane. "I'll go when your mom says it's time." Sloane hesitated. Then she sighed. 5 more minutes. Caleb cheered softly. When it was finally time, Caleb hugged Ronan tightly, arms wrapped with surprising strength. "You'll come back?" Caleb asked. Ronan knelt again, steady and clear. "If your mom allows it, I'd like to, and I won't disappear." Sloane crossed her arms. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "I won't," Ronan said. "I promise." They walked together toward the park exit. Not side by side. Not yet. But not far apart either. As they reached the path, Caleb slipped his small hand into Ronan's without thinking. Sloane noticed. She didn't pull him away. Ronan felt something settle inside his chest. Not relief, not victory, but responsibility. This wasn't a reunion. It was permission to try. And for the first time since everything had fallen apart, Ronan believed that trying slowly, honestly, consistently might be enough. Trust did not return in a single moment. It arrived in minutes kept. Ronan learned quickly that time was no longer something he owned. It was something he was granted carefully, conditionally, and only when earned. Sloane set clear boundaries, and Ronan accepted every one of them without argument. Sundays at the park. One weekday pickup from school once the paperwork was approved. No surprises, no late arrivals, no promises he couldn't keep. He arrived early every time. On his first school pickup day, Ronan stood outside the gate 10 minutes ahead of schedule, hands clasped behind his back like a nervous student. Children poured out in noisy clusters, backpacks bouncing, parents calling names. When Caleb spotted him, the boy froze, then broke into a grin so wide it seemed to lift the afternoon. "You came," Caleb said, breathless. "I said I would," Ronan replied, kneeling. "And when I say it, I mean it." They went for ice cream, nothing extravagant, just a small shop with chipped paint and a bell that rang when the door opened. Ronan listened as Caleb talked about his teacher, his favorite recess game, and a classmate who felt lonely on the first day. Ronan listened without checking his phone, without interrupting, without steering the conversation back to himself. At exactly 4:55 p.m., they arrived back at Sloane's apartment. Sloane checked the clock. "You said 5. "I said not," after Ronan answered gently. "I wanted to be sure." Something shifted in her expression. Not forgiveness. Recognition. Weeks passed. The routine held. Ronan brought small, thoughtful gifts, never expensive, always personal. A paper airplane he learned to fold. A used book about dinosaurs with a handwritten note inside. A smooth stone he found that looked like a fossil. One evening, Sloane invited him to stay for a simple dinner. The invitation was quiet, almost casual, but Ronan understood what it meant. They ate together, the three of them, at a small table that wobbled slightly. Caleb talked. Sloane listened. Ronan listened more. After Caleb went to bed, Sloane spoke. "You're different," she said, not looking at him. "The old Ronan would have argued with me by now, or tried to convince me with logic." Ronan smiled faintly. "The old Ronan was wrong a lot." She studied him. "This isn't easy for me, I know," he said. "I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking for honest." Sloane nodded slowly. That night, as Ronan walked back to his apartment, he realized something profound. Keeping time being where you say you'll be was not a small thing. It was everything. Ronan hadn't seen Maya in weeks. Life had narrowed to essentials, Caleb Sloane work searches and routines that demanded his full attention. But one afternoon, as he passed the grocery plaza again, he spotted the familiar fundraiser table. Maya stood behind it, carefully arranging candy bars into neat rows. The same adult volunteer stood nearby chatting with another parent. "Hi, Ronan," Maya said, spotting him immediately. He stopped, surprised and genuinely pleased. "Hi, Maya. How's the fundraiser almost done?" she said proudly. "We raised enough for new art supplies." "That's amazing," Ronan said. "You should be proud." Maya shrugged, but her smile lingered. "Did you find your son?" Ronan nodded. "I did, because of you." Her eyes lit up. "Is he okay?" "He's great," Ronan replied. "He's happy." Maya considered this, satisfied. Good. They talked briefly, openly, with the same respectful distance as before. Ronan made sure the conversation stayed public and appropriate. When Maya's mother approached, Ronan introduced himself politely, explaining how Maya had helped him reconnect with his family. Sofia Reyes listened quietly, her expression reserved but attentive. "Thank you for looking out for her," Ronan said sincerely. "She's very perceptive." Sofia smiled faintly. "She notices things, sometimes too much." As Ronan walked away, something tugged at his memory. Later that evening, driving through Manhattan, his eyes caught a familiar glass tower, the former headquarters of Hale Meridian Group. The 22nd floor. His floor. Maya's voice echoed in his mind. "My mom used to clean there at night." The realization hit slowly, then all at once. He pulled over. The woman who stood beside that fundraiser table, the one who raised a daughter kind enough to help a stranger, had worked in his building, in his company, under his name. Ronan sat in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel, as images resurfaced. Forms signed in stacks, names blurred into numbers, policies approved without faces attached. He thought of Maya's calm wisdom, her mother's quiet dignity, and the uncomfortable truth settled in his chest. Even before losing everything, Ronan had taken things from people without ever knowing it. That night he didn't sleep, not from fear, but from clarity. If he wanted to prove change wasn't just temporary, it couldn't stop with his family. It had to reach everyone he once overlooked. Ronan asked for the meeting the right way. He contacted Sofia through the community volunteer, explained his intentions clearly, and suggested a public cafe during the day. No pressure, no urgency, complete transparency. Sofia arrived on time, posture, straight eyes, guarded but calm. Ronan didn't waste words. "I was the CEO of Hale Meridian Group," he said plainly. "And I believe you worked in our building." Sofia nodded once. 12 years. Ronan inhaled slowly. "When you got sick and asked for different hours, the company let you go." Her jaw tightened. "Yes." "There's no excuse," Ronan said. "I didn't know you personally. That's the problem. I should have." Sofia studied him for a long moment. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because your daughter helped me find my family," Ronan replied. "And because I need to take responsibility, not for appearances, but for impact." He slid a folder across the table, unopened. "This isn't charity," he continued. "It's a proposal. A job with flexible hours, medical support, and stability. Structured properly, legal, sustainable." Sofia didn't open the folder right away. Why, she asked. Ronan met her eyes. "Because change that doesn't cost anything isn't real." When Sofia finally opened the folder, she read silently. No tears, no shock, just careful attention. "I'll consider it," she said. "Not for you, for Maya." "That's fair," Ronan replied. When he left the cafe, Ronan felt neither pride nor relief. He felt alignment. Weeks later, Northlight Consulting was born, small, deliberate, human. Sofia joined as operations manager. Maya visited after school, sometimes doing homework at the corner table. Caleb met her one afternoon. They bonded instantly over dinosaurs. Watching them laugh together, Ronan felt something settle deep inside him. Redemption wasn't loud. It was consistent. And for the first time, Ronan understood what success truly looked like. Northlight Consulting did not feel like a comeback. There were no headlines, no applause, No congratulatory emails from people who had once begged for Ronan Hale's time. The office was small, tucked into a modest building where the elevator stalled occasionally, and the windows looked out onto a brick wall instead of a skyline. And yet Ronan arrived every morning before anyone else. He made coffee for the team. He learned names, he asked questions, and waited for answers. Sophia Reyes became the spine of the operation, organizing schedules, contracts, and details Ronan once ignored. Maya sat quietly in a corner after school some days, coloring or reading, while waiting for her mom, occasionally glancing up to offer a comment that was both innocent and unexpectedly insightful. "People work better when they feel safe," she said once, as if stating a universal law. Ronan wrote it down. Still, balance did not come easily. Some days exhaustion crept back in the old reflex to stay late, to push harder, to prove worth through sacrifice. Each time Ronan felt the pull of his former self, that familiar hunger for control. And each time he chose differently. On Thursdays he left the office at exactly 2:30. No excuses. No just one more email. Because at 3 p.m., Caleb waited outside his school gate. The boy began to expect him now. That expectation was both beautiful and terrifying. When Ronan arrived, Caleb's face lit up without hesitation, no longer scanning the street for disappointment. "You're always on time," Caleb said once, impressed. "I plan to stay that way," Ronan replied. They walked to a small park or an ice cream shop, sometimes just sitting on a bench, talking about dinosaurs, space, or why certain clouds looked like animals. Ronan listened with the attention he once reserved for boardroom negotiations. Sloane watched all of this carefully. She noticed the consistency, the lack of urgency, the way Ronan never pushed for more than she offered. He didn't ask to come inside unless invited. He didn't question her boundaries. He didn't make promises designed to accelerate forgiveness. One evening after Caleb had gone to bed, Sloane and Ronan sat on opposite ends of the couch. "How's the job search?" she asked. Ronan hesitated, then answered honestly. "Hard. Northlight is growing, but slowly. Money's tight." Sloane nodded. "And you're okay with that?" "I'm learning to be," he said. "For the first time, I know what I'm building it for." Sloane studied his face, searching for cracks. Finding none, she looked away. "Michael Caleb," she corrected herself, still adjusting. "He asked me something yesterday." Ronan's chest tightened. "What did he ask?" "He asked if you'd ever stop coming again." The question sat between them, heavy. Ronan swallowed. "What did you say I said?" "I don't think so." Sloane paused. "But I told him grown-ups have to earn trust." Ronan nodded slowly. "That's fair." That night, walking back to his apartment, Ronan felt the familiar fear return, not of failure, but of success. Because rebuilding something fragile required more strength than losing something powerful. And he wasn't done proving himself yet. The question came unexpectedly. It was a Thursday afternoon, warm and bright, the kind of day that felt borrowed from a better life. Ronan had just returned Caleb home after ice cream arriving again 5 minutes early. Sloane invited him inside. "Stay for a bit," she said. "I'm making pasta." They ate together at the small kitchen table. Caleb talked animatedly about a science project using his fork to demonstrate planetary orbits. Ronan laughed genuinely, the sound surprising even himself. After dinner, Caleb headed to his room to finish homework. Then, standing in the doorway, he turned back. "Dad," he said. "Yes, buddy, why don't you live with us?" The question fell like a dropped plate. Ronan froze. Sloane stiffened. Caleb continued, unaware of the tension he had created. "You're here a lot now. You come to school, you play with me. You don't leave when your phone rings anymore." Ronan knelt slowly, choosing each word with care. "It's not that simple," he said gently. "I hurt your mom, and you. We need time." Caleb frowned. "But you changed." Sloane stepped in. "Caleb, sweetheart, go brush your teeth." The boy hesitated, clearly unhappy, but obeyed. The moment the door closed, silence rushed in. "I didn't put that idea in his head," Ronan said immediately. "I know," Sloane replied, rubbing her temples. "He's been thinking about it for a while." Ronan waited. He didn't rush to fill the space. "Have you thought about moving back to Westchester?" Sloane asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. "Back, not the house," she clarified. "The town. Caleb misses his old friends. My consulting work is remote and—" She hesitated. It would mean stability. Ronan's heart raced. "If that's what's best for Caleb, I'll find a way." "You'd start over there?" she asked. "Without guarantees?" "Yes," Ronan said immediately. "Separate places if needed. On your terms." Sloane studied him carefully. "You're not afraid of losing control anymore, are you?" Ronan smiled faintly. "I'm afraid of losing what matters." They sat quietly. Sloane finally spoke. "I'm not ready to say yes to everything, but I'm considering it." That night, Ronan walked home lighter than he had in months. Not because he'd won something, but because the door once slammed shut had opened just enough to let hope breathe. The move was slow, intentional. Sloane did not rush decisions. Ronan did not pressure her. Together they discussed logistics, schools, neighborhoods, always with Caleb's needs first. Westchester became a possibility again, not as a symbol of wealth, but as a place of continuity. Ronan found a modest apartment 10 minutes from a small rental house Sloane chose. Separate addresses, shared responsibility. Northlight Consulting continued to grow carefully. Ronan turned down projects that demanded endless hours or questionable ethics. It cost him money. It gained him sleep. Caleb adjusted easily. Children always did when adults stopped making chaos the norm. He returned to familiar streets, reconnected with friends, and proudly told everyone his dad picked him up from school now. Maya visited often, her presence weaving quietly into their lives. She and Caleb became inseparable, bonded by imagination and an easy kindness. Sophia and Sloane developed a cautious friendship, one built on mutual respect rather than obligation. One evening, months later, the four adults sat together after the kids fell asleep. "You know," Sophia said, stirring her tea, "my mom used to say that people don't change because they want to. They change because they finally understand the cost of not changing." Sloane looked at Ronan. "That true for you?" Ronan didn't hesitate. "Yes." There were no dramatic reunions, no declarations, no perfect ending. Instead, there were routines. Sunday breakfasts, Thursday pickups, texts answered promptly, promises kept. One afternoon, Ronan stood in his small office watching sunlight spill across a whiteboard filled with handwritten values, people before profit. Listen first. Keep your word. Caleb's drawing hung beside it, a stick-figure family holding hands, all smiling. That evening, Ronan arrived at Sloane's house to pick up Caleb. Sloane handed him a container of leftovers. "For later," she said. Ronan smiled. "Thank you." She paused, then added quietly, "You can stay for dinner tomorrow if you want." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was trust in motion. As Ronan drove home, he realized something profound. He had not rebuilt his old life. He had built a better one. And for the first time, it felt strong enough to last. 2 years earlier, Ronan Hale had believed promises were words. Now he understood they were patterns. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when he realized just how much had changed. He stood outside Caleb's elementary school, leaning against the fence, watching children spill into the yard for recess. The sun was warm. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and crayons. Caleb spotted him immediately. "Dad," he shouted, waving with the kind of unfiltered joy that left no room for doubt. Ronan waved back, heart full steady. No fear of being late. No anxiety about missing something more important. Nothing was more important than this. After school, they walked to a small sandwich shop nearby. Caleb talked nonstop about a science project and a new kid who sat alone at lunch. He looked scared, Caleb said, frowning. So I asked him if he wanted to sit with me. Ronan smiled. That was kind of you. I learned it from Maya, Caleb replied matter-of-factly. Ronan nodded, feeling the quiet circle of things coming together. Later that evening, Ronan arrived at Sloane's house with Caleb. He stayed for dinner, something that had become normal without ever being declared permanent. They cooked together. They laughed when the pasta stuck. They cleaned up without anyone rushing away. After Caleb went to bed, Sloane poured 2 cups of tea and sat across from Ronan at the table. You know, she said quietly, I don't worry anymore when Caleb waits for you. Ronan looked up. Because you trust me, because you show up, she answered. Every time. The words settled deep. Sloane continued. I don't know what our future looks like. I'm not ready to label it. But I know this Caleb is safe with you. And that matters more than anything. Ronan nodded, emotion tightening his throat. Thank you. That night, as he drove home, Ronan passed the old skyline he once ruled. It no longer pulled at him. The power it once held over his identity was gone. His worth no longer lived in buildings or titles. It lived in a child who waved when he arrived, in a woman who no longer flinched when he made a promise, and in the quiet confidence that he had finally learned how to keep his word. Northlight Consulting grew slowly, deliberately. No sudden leaps, no reckless expansion. Ronan resisted every urge to scale too fast, remembering exactly where that path had led him before. The office was still modest, but it was alive. Conversations flowed openly. People laughed without fear of being judged for wasting time. Sophia Reyes ran operations with calm authority, respected not because of her title, but because she earned it daily. Maya, now taller and louder and endlessly curious, visited after school most days. She sat at the corner desk doing homework occasionally, offering commentary no one asked for but everyone secretly appreciated. You should put plants in here, she announced one afternoon. Places feel better when something is growing. Ronan smiled. You're probably right. They bought plants. On the wall behind Ronan's desk hung 3 things: a printed list of company values, a photo of the team at a picnic, and a crayon drawing by Caleb of a sun, a park, and stick figures holding hands. That drawing mattered more than any award he had ever received. One Friday afternoon, Laura Sloane arrived with Caleb and a small cake. We thought you might want to celebrate, she said. Celebrate what? Ronan asked, surprised. We just signed our first full-year contract, Sophia said from the doorway, smiling. It's official. The office erupted into cheers, not loud, not showy, but genuine. As Caleb and Maya ran around the room laughing, Ronan watched Sophia talk with Sloane, 2 women from different worlds, now sharing the same space with ease. Later, Sloane pulled Ronan aside. You really changed, she said softly. Not because you lost everything, but because you chose to rebuild differently. Ronan nodded. Losing everything just made it impossible to ignore. That night, after everyone left, Ronan stayed behind for a moment. He turned off the lights one by one, pausing in the quiet. Northlight wasn't a replacement for what he lost. It was proof that something better could be built if you were willing to listen, slow down, and care. And this time he was. On a sunny Saturday morning, Ronan woke early. Today was Caleb's 9th birthday. The party was simple balloons tied to picnic tables, homemade snacks, a park full of laughter. Maya arrived with a handmade scrapbook filled with photos, notes, and tiny memories collected over the past 2 years. This is better than a toy, Caleb said, hugging her. Ronan watched from a distance, heart steady, full. Sloane stood beside him, not tense, not guarded, just present. Are you happy? She asked quietly. Ronan didn't answer immediately. He watched Caleb run, watched Maya explain something with dramatic gestures, watched Sophia laugh, as if she had nothing to prove. Yes, Ronan said finally. In a way I didn't know how to be before. They sat on a bench close enough to feel like a family without forcing the word. I used to think success meant building something big, Ronan continued. Now I think it means being someone safe. Sloane nodded. For a child, that's everything. As the afternoon faded, Caleb ran over, breathless. Dad, did you see that? I saw, Ronan replied. And I'll always be here to see it. Later that evening, after the party ended and the park grew quiet, Ronan helped pack up the last box. He walked Caleb home hand in hand. At the door, Caleb hugged him tightly. You'll come tomorrow too? Right, Ronan smiled. Of course. Not because it sounded good, but because it was true. Driving home, Ronan passed the city lights' reflections blurring across the windshield. He thought about the man he had been, the one who measured life in profits and distance. That man felt like someone else now. He had lost an empire. He had gained a life. One built on presence, on repair, on showing up again and again even when it was hard. And that Ronan finally understood was the real ending. Not a triumph, not a reunion, but a promise kept. Did this story leave a lasting impression on you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tap the end screen to see another heartwarming story waiting for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Until our next story.